Are we good?
Ye-
All right. Hi, everyone. Just give me one more second. Posting to all of our social networks as usual. And today I will be drawing a bear. So it's not so much like a focus on like lighting or color or shading. I'm just kind of doing a general grasp of how I would kind of color and shade this bear. Okay, and I think we are ready to go. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Von Rieden with Concept Cookie, and I'm here with Deandra Pop. And today we are going to be doing a bear drawing. So, like I was saying, it's just going to be a very general live stream where it's not going to kind of focus on lighting or color or shading. It's just going to be kind of everything rolled up into one general live stream. So this one's supposed to be more fun. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And this one is actually kind of a precursor to a tutorial that's going to be released later today on how to work with line art and how to color on top of it and how to have the confidence to not worry about, like, if I'm covering up my line work, is it going to be taking away some of the strength that it had? And I kind of want you guys to be just as confident in being like, yeah, if my lines are really strong, I want to make and color I want to color on top of it even stronger so it's even better than with just the line art alone. So with that, and then I might show you some stuff I got from Comic-Con because I was away in San Diego this weekend. That's why it's been kind of crazy at Concept Cookie, but we'll save that toward the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share out my Photoshop canvas here. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the sidebar. We are going to be constantly looking, and they don't even have to relate to what I'm drawing or what I'm working on. It could be anything pertaining to digital art or any questions that you may have just about Photoshop or drawing or inspiration, anything it might be. So let me go ahead and get started then. So the first thing I'm going to do, well, let me hide this bottom bar, move the bear a little bit. And the sketch I have on a single layer. So the way that I'm going to start this out is I'm going to lay out some base colors on the side, kind of like prep for what I'm about to do. Then I'm going to go ahead and start shading. If any of you are wondering, so this is for one of my friends whose birthday was over the weekend, and she loves bears. And I really wanted to draw her something, but I didn't have the time because I was in San Diego, and it was kind of more crazy than I thought it would be. But I wanted to take the time and wish her a happy birthday. So here I'm just working up some basic warm browns that I'm going to be laying down on the bear. So the way that I'm going to be working with this bear is this shape right here. I'm going to work more of a darker brown. And then the area in the front, so like the front facial region, I guess if you want to call it that, is going to be more of a lighter color. And for bears, I mean, the way that an animated bear could work is like you want to really pull with proportions and shape it out in different ways. So obviously this is not a realistic looking bear. And I'm using like bears as reference. So I have some bear pictures on the side as reference, and like some things I will pull from, like, okay, how does the transition of color go from like the nose to the area around the eyes? And even around the eyes, they have a darker color to it. So things I'm pulling from reference, but that doesn't mean that like I have to pull everything like realism or proportions. And honestly, with animated characters, you want to keep it more shapely. It has a lot more shape language to it, and I just want to create a very happy-looking birthday bear. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out a really heavy color underneath. So sometimes this will happen where you're like, well, that's great and all, but this looks terrible because not all my lines are pure black, and then I have that white where I was edging out the nose. Here's a trick that you can do. So you take your sketch layer and it's set to a normal layer mode. Just set it to a multiply. You see how that works? And that way, even if you use a color that's not black, or if you have some areas where you might have used some of the background color, this way you will still have your sketch, and it's much easier to see. Actually, I'm going to move this to the side here. Hold on. Oh, and Deanders, feel free to ask the questions
Um,
as they come in.
I don't want to interrupt you as you were like
Oh
setting up.
no, you can go.
Okay. Well, you have a few questions that relate to what you're doing right now.
Okay.
So I'll go over those first. In Photoshop, I've heard that it's better to color on a color background. Is this true? And how do you change the color?
Yes. So kind of what I'm doing right here is I'm working. I guess it wouldn't necessarily be the background layer, but I like working on a color. I think working on a pure white is rather intimidating, and honestly, it's easier to work on like a mid-tone gray to get your colors in check. Because oftentimes when you work on a white background, you choose colors that are softer or not quite as dark, just because of the contrast that that background will create. So normally what's advised is you work on a color background so that your eye doesn't see the contrast between the white. Or even with this background of this dark brown, I can build up my lights, and the contrast from the darker brown will really make the lights that I lay on that much more significant. Oh,
Okay.
and I guess really quick, everything I'm doing with the chalk brush. Just wanted to point that out there really quick.
Your next question is, how do you backlight fur?
That's actually a good question. So I might do some of that at the end. The way that I'm going to be treating this picture is in a little bit, after I lay down some nice base foundations for me to work on, I'm going to then work right on top of the sketch layer itself. So I can kind of show you guys, and this is all pertaining to what the tutorial is on later, and it's a free tutorial where all it talks about is working over your line art and how to be confident with that. So for backlighting, I would wait until almost near the very end, so near like the polishing render phase, because that's such an intense detailing polish work that I would have to do that I would save that near the end, or else otherwise I would be too focused on making that look perfect right from the get-go. So I will show you how to do that later on.
Your next question is, this has been on my mind for ages. Do you have to be a citizen to enroll in the workshop, or can you have an account with CG Cookie and still enroll?
You don't even need an account in CG Cookie. It's recommended, and you don't have to be a citizen. So the workshop is kind of like an open workshop to any artist out there that is wants to join. And actually, I was just talking to Wes yesterday about it. We are doing the registrations mid-August, so probably I think August 15th will probably be the actual date. So literally in the middle of August, we're going to be opening that registration.
Alright. Is it good for an artist to keep one way of coloring and drawing, or is it better to switch around? I have a problem that I can't maintain one style.
Definitely switch it around. I definitely feel like I want to get to a point where I only have one way of drawing it and coloring, but then I always feel like I have to follow this meticulous plan in of how I color. So there's some things that I do keep from drawing to drawing. Like I almost always work on a color background, and I almost always build up my lights. But the way that I sometimes do it, like sometimes I'll use a circle brush for the entire thing. Sometimes I'll use a chalk brush, like I am now for the entire thing. It all just kind of depends on the picture and how you're feeling that day. So don't feel like you have to trap yourself in a system that you kind of locked in for yourself. Definitely feel like you can definitely experiment, and I guess that's my best advice for you would be to do that. Okay, now I'm going to build up the front part of the face here as well. What's nice, since it's underneath that sketch layer, I don't have to worry about like coloring over the nose, which is definitely a very prominent black area right now, which I can work with later on. And even though I'm keeping the light source in mind, I'm definitely doing a base color all around first, and then I'll build up my lights in areas. So then like his snout right here would probably be casting a shadow in this area. So I'm only going to bring that lighting around the snout. Now since this is an animated character, I don't have to go for realism, but I like to try to have like a pseudo-realism where there's some fantastical lighting and shading into it, but overall there's still definitely a light source that you could point out and be like, yeah, well that's probably where the light source is coming from.
At what point do you get rid of your line art?
soon. So I will show you. So there's a point where it's like I can't go any farther. Like it gets to a point where I'm almost wasting my time if I keep working on it because then I need to start working over the line art. But this is one of those things that it's definitely a personal preference and it's just kind of trial and error. So for me, like I kind of have a general idea of where I would probably want to start coloring over the line art, but it may not be the right time. It may be too soon. It may be a little later. But as long as you don't drag it out too long, then it's all right. Just as long as eventually you get to that point.
In your opinion, what is a Cintiq best used for?
Well, it's hard to answer that since currently I'm using it as a tablet with the screen turned off. I think it's best though for line work. And the way that I do use my Cintiq is purely for like line art and sketching stuff. But for shading, I still think a tablet is better. Now, it's a little biased because I've never had the larger Cintiqs where maybe that would be what I would need to feel more comfortable shading. But as of right now, I definitely still feel more comfortable shading with just a regular old tablet. Oops. Let me grab this gray. That's going to be the base for his eyes here.
Do you have any experience in animation? And if so, where did you learn it?
Yeah, I have a few animations, none that anyone will ever see except for my classmates back when I went to school. So I would say bare minimum, bare minimum. There's nothing that I feel confident in showing anyone, but I did work with like learning how to rig a model and basics of that kind of stuff. And I did go to school. I went to the Art Institute of Illinois. I was actually just there last weekend giving a presentation, and it's one of those things where I'm. It's hard to say do I recommend art schools because I don't, but I guess just through the people you meet, I feel like I made such good lifelong friends that I can't regret it. But I feel like in terms of learning, I feel like you can definitely learn everything that you learn in art school on your own, especially with the internet and how many tutorials are out there nowadays. You know what? I'm gonna make his eyes golden. All right, so in this case, since I want to make his eyes a golden color, my initial reaction was, well, go for like a gold color. But in this case, I forget that I want to start with a darker version of that color, definitely one lower on the value range, and then build up the gold on the bottom part of the iris. And that's what will make it really pop.
Is it someone's birthday today?
I actually do have a few friends whose birthday is today. So it's Paul Hoffner, who works at Riot Games, and another person that works at Riot Games. I'm pretty sure it's Paul Kwan or Zeronis, and I think it's his birthday. But this in particular is for a close friend of mine, and her name's Franny, and she loves bears. So I wanted to sketch a bear for her. Her birthday was over the weekend, but I was in San Diego, so I didn't have the time to really flesh out a full bear. Okay, I'm just going to work that same gray that I used for the eye. I'm going to lay it on the teeth as well.
Why did you decide against the blue?
I think the gold would be more cohesive with the color choices I'm doing. It definitely brings more of a warmth to it. Where I feel like the blue, it also felt a little out of place where I've never really seen a grizzly bear with blue eyes. They almost always have dark eyes or or even very beautiful like brown eyes. I know it's kind of weird. Normally I stick with drawing green or blue eyes since I think I'm more attracted to that visually, but I think for this concept, I think gold works better. But once again, that's all personal preference. I mean, you could definitely have a bear with blue eyes if you want. I mean, look at the Bears and Braves. Brave, sorry. The Pixar movie with the little bears, they all had those blue eyes. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot. I have a party hat. So for the party hat, let's make it red, just because that's my favorite color. And it definitely ties in. Oops, that's way too light. It definitely ties in that sense that I'm using very warm colors. So you always have to be somewhat conscious of like what colors am I laying in this piece, and is it such a contrast? Like let's say I laid in, let me think of a really annoying color I could put in really quick. So let's say I laid in this like intense teal for the polka dots up here. Like not only does your eye immediately get drawn up here, but it doesn't even flow with any of the other color choices I used. Now it's not to say it's wrong or that you can never do it, but for what I'm trying to do, it kind of is a distraction where it does take away from the piece as a whole. So just be conscious of that. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. And I always feel like I should never tell people you can't do something. I just try to tell them what is more accurate or what is visually more appealing. So in this case, something like this, where that yellow ties in with the yellows on the face and the yellows in the eye, it brings it as a more cohesive piece altogether. And maybe for this little puff up here, I'll make this lighter color as well. Something like that. Oh, and then I'm also going to lay the gray on the shine on his lip and his nose. Like that. So like even with some people, like some people might think, well, this could be done. Like this is a really quick concept sketch. Because in concept art, you're not trying to make anything look to the point where it's like a beauty shot. Because concept art is supposed to be really quick and it's supposed to, lay down a concept. But in this case, since it's kind of like learning how to shade and all that stuff, we're going to take it a step further. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do this on a new layer so I can show you. So this is what this layer added. You can definitely see the difference. And then I'm going to make another new layer. And now before I go on top of the line art, I'm just going to make one more transition of brown layer on the actual bear. Give him some more forehead wrinkles. So be conscious of your brush strokes as well. Because if like I do these horizontal strokes on the bear's forehead, you definitely get that sense of a wrinkle forming. So any little touches like that that you can add definitely help the overall piece.
How do you know where to put the folds on the neck? Is there a trick or a basic rule to it?
That's just through. Oh, that's a tough question because I would say I looked at a lot of like animation stuff, especially when I worked on Eat Sheep with CD Cookie. I looked at a lot of animation tutorials and like how to draw in the animated sense. Because I drew things so realistically, it was hard for me to think in like this exaggerated shape language way. So my best advice would be look at like DreamWorks or Pixar or Disney. Look at their animated characters and don't look at like the final 3D render. Look at the sketchbooks of those movies. And you'll see how the artists treat shapes like this, especially even like Brother Bear. You could check out Brother Bear or Brave. And I think having that sense of reference and seeing how they do it, and then kind of determining, oh, okay, they added these kind of folds under there to really emphasize the mouth and how much it opens and closes, which creates so many wrinkles. Like little things like that I think are interesting, and you learn just over time. So it's one of those things where you don't just pick it up right away. It's one of those things where you just kind of visually grasp, oh, this is how they're doing it, this is why they're doing it, I can kind of understand that, and then you apply your own technique to it.
When you color in black and white value, how do you know how dark you need to shade a place? In preparation for color, colors like yellow or light colors are especially difficult.
When you color in black and white value, how do you? Oh, okay. So, yeah, this is a little tough. Let me go ahead. All right, really quick, I'm going to do a quick demo on the side here. So let's lay out the different colors of the rainbow. Oops, that is not orange. There is that. I'm choosing from my color palette really quickly and I'm misclicking. Because each of these colors, this might not really show you a great value range when they have the hue to it, but let's go ahead and then we're going to take the hue and saturation of these colors and we're going to pretty much cover it up. Okay, so you can see when I turn down the hue and saturation, let me turn that layer on and off. So here you can see all the colors clearly, and I'm going to even erase the background layer underneath of it. Because when you work in black and white, you kind of have to understand what each of these values are in grayscale without turning on any hue and saturation. So this is definitely something you get through practice. So I could tell you right now, this green is going to be a very low value because I can just visually see it, where this is going to be low. The yellow is going to be high, orange will be high, the red will be low. And then the more that you kind of test yourself like this, then I'll turn on my thing and you can see, yeah, the yellow and the orange were high, the red and the green were low in the value. So it's just something where visually over time you'll be able to kind of tell. Where here, I mean, obviously you can't tell like which one's purple, which one's blue. But if you know something's going to be yellow, you can't just think in your range of hues. You also have to be thinking of, okay, well, what value is this hue? Because saturation will kind of play intermingle between the two, but you really have to think not only in hues of what it's going to be in grayscale, but also the value. So that's kind of my tip for that kind of stuff. I'm going to delete that. Okay, back to the bear.
Is
And I don't
drawing
know if, oh, you go.
Sorry, Tim. Is drawing with a Cintiq just as easy as drawing traditionally? I find it very challenging to draw using a normal tablet. I'm trying to decide if I should invest.
That's tough. I think even with the Cintiq, there is a transition time of getting comfortable with it. I think
Mm-hmm.
a tablet, it might be longer just because you have to have that hand-eye coordination that you're definitely not used to if you're switching from traditional. Where, yeah, Cintiq definitely gives you that transition where, yeah, you're still looking down at what you're drawing the entire time, but you're still working with a software that you might not be familiar with, and that's what I think you should focus on more. So rather than focusing on is a tablet or a Cintiq better for me, really think about what software is best for you, and if it's Photoshop, really take the time to learn that because I promise you, a tablet will come to you in time. Like even if you're uncomfortable with it now, just if you keep practicing with it. I mean, I can tell you, my first 3 months using a tablet were rough at best.
Mm-hmm.
It was even hard just to shade an apple correctly. So I'm telling you, just take your time with it, and eventually you'll get the hang of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's the problem that I was facing. Like, I was thinking about getting a Cintiq because I just was so, like, frustrated with trying to learn, like, using a regular tablet, and I never thought I would get the hang of it, but, like, as with everything, just practice. And I'm glad that, like, I stuck through with it and didn't get a Cintiq, personally.
Yeah, they're definitely nice, but I would say anything can be done with a tablet. Except, yeah, I guess like sketching does seem to be a little easier with a Cintiq, but I do think having the freedom of using a tablet, which is only like $200 compared to a Cintiq, which can range from like 1,000 to 3,000, is definitely a difference.
I feel like it's only worth it if you are like in the industry and like you get to use one of like the really big ones.
Yeah, that's what I'm like immediately I thought of like Loesch and what's that guy's name? Oh, I can't think of it, but like, yeah, if this is like your industry and you're a professional and you know, okay, this is an investment. I'm investing in my career, not so much like, oh, I'm not comfortable with the tablet. I should get a Cintiq to try that out because it's definitely not one of those things you just try out. It's one of those things you have to be really comfortable and confident that, yeah, I'm going to be using this a lot and this is the industry that I'm sticking with. Okay, so now I'm at the point where I'm going to go ahead and start coloring over my line art layer. Let's see where it's at. Oh yeah, that was my first bear sketch. Hold on, I'll show that in the corner. It's definitely like a weird, scary Winnie the Pooh. I don't know. I don't know what I was going for there. I'll just leave that in the corner. Okay. So then this is what my bear looks like without my line art. So you can see how most of the forms and what we created, actually I kind of like that the no or the line art has kind of created this brown line effect. Anyways, you can kind of see how all the forms and the shapes are there even without the line art. So I use the line art as a guideline and a fundamental or a foundation for me to lay what I'm going to do next on top of. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to edge out the bear.
And when did you get a Cintiq?
I was one of those people that when they announced the 12-inch HD or 13-inch, I think it is, the HD Cintiq, I was one of those that was on board because it was only $1,000 and I always wanted to, and so I ordered it right away. Now, mind you, I probably should have waited until like a month after it came out, looked at other people's tutorials and reviews on it, and just saw like, okay, these are the problems with it. Is it worth your money? Because I do think I would not have gotten it if I would have known some of the things I do now. And that's not to say I still don't like it, but there's things about it that are bothersome enough where I would have wished I would have saved my money and just kept waiting until I could afford one of the larger ones. So with Cintiqs, don't always just assume that they're going to be awesome and save you and your time and money and effort from then they're out because even when you get a Cintiq, there might be problems with it or you might not even feel comfortable with using it. So just something to keep in mind.
And how long have you been using your regular tablet?
I've been using a regular tablet since I found out about um, it when I was in school. So how old was I? I must have been 19 going on 20. And that's when I first got my first bamboo tablet. And even though I got picked on a little bit for not having like an Intuos, it wasn't like it was a really cheap looking plastic gray one and it was awful. But, well, in other people's eyes, in my eyes, I thought it was the best thing ever because it was the first time I could draw at home, and I really took advantage of that. I was drawing like 6 hours every day on that thing. And honestly, I still believe that that tablet was just as good as an Intuos. Now, there's some personal preference in like terms of how does the pen feel? Is the actual surface of the tablet more smooth? But in terms of what it does the exact same job as an expensive tablet does.
What did you major in at the Art Institute?
Yeah, this is always funny when I get this question because I actually did not do any digital art or concept art stuff in school. Like we had a photo manipulation class, but I was actually my background's in 3D art. So I graduated with a game art and design degree. So I graduated thinking I might be doing 3D work, but I was so persistent on wanting to do 2D stuff that I filled most of my portfolio with 2D stuff, and it got to the point where they actually tried failing me out of my second portfolio class because I refused to put too much 3D stuff in there because I really wanted a 2D job. And thankfully, I kept with my I really wanted it, so I put all my 2D stuff in my portfolio except for like two 3D models, and I got that my job at CG Cookie that day at that portfolio show. So I'm still thankful that I made that decision on keeping up with my 2D stuff. Although I will say, if anyone is doing 3D and they're interested in doing concept art, I think a lot of what I learned in 3D has translated into my 2D stuff. Like even thinking about forms and lighting and how you really have to think about, okay, how, because since I modeled things, I knew exactly what I was looking for a concept. I needed to know, okay, what is this guy holding? Can I see it from this angle? And I always think about that when I'm doing client work. So I definitely think if you are a concept artist that is also doing 3D, that'll benefit you significantly. And you'll see how some of those things that you learn will translate into 2D stuff. And as you can tell, I try to keep it, or I keep it a little more on the messy side, just because I like the how this looks. I like that painterly feel that this sometimes gives off.
For the workshop, is it a one-time payment?
Yeah, so actually, I should probably talk a little more about this. Okay, if people don't know what this workshop is or why it keeps getting brought up, I'm doing a workshop where I'm going to be taking, I think we decided on 24 students, and for 5 weeks, I'm going to be taking them to a workshop, not like in person, online, but I'm going to be going through this course with them, and it's going to be very much a one-on-one experience, but I also wanted to create a classroom experience. And what this workshop aims to teach is the title of it I just thought of while I was in San Diego, and it's going to be called I Can Draw Anything. And pretty much supposed to be like one of those things where after 5 weeks you're like, I can literally draw like anything Fang Zhu can do. Pretty much, I'm going to give you the tools to be able to analyze and interpret and then execute any drawing that you want. So like in terms of how would I explain that better, like I'm not good at environments. But that's not to say I can't draw environments. Like if I draw every individual piece of environment, I could do it. So I could draw like a leaf, I can draw a tree, but it's definitely on an individual basis. But once you learn how to look and observe and analyze those kind of things, and then be able to feel like, okay, I can draw this. Now, how can I interpret this to my 2D skills in Photoshop? And that's where I'm not good, where I haven't done the research on like, okay, I need to really look at how these speed painters do environments and then be able to translate that in my own work. So I really want it to be one of those workshops where I am showing and guiding you how to do stuff on your own and how you can feel confident that I can go out and draw anything as long as I know how to do it. I can go about drawing it. And the workshop itself will start in September, and it will be one of those things where it's like every week there will be new assignments, there will be homework, I'll be doing paint overs on some of your works, and then there will be a specific live stream only to those people that are in the workshop. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that, and we'll give more information like mid-August, like I was saying. Oh, and to those who are wondering about the price, so I've been talking to Wes about it a lot, where I wanted, since this is the first one, and I know a lot of workshops can round between like 500 to 600 to 700, sometimes even with CGMA. I think since it's my first time and I really want to get, well, I want to do the best job I can, but just as a learning experience, there might be some mishaps along the way, admittedly. And I think this one's going to be a $250 5-week class. So that's probably the price that we're going to stick with. And I am excited to start it. I've already started some of the promo art, so I'll definitely be able to start revealing that when August starts coming around. All right, so back to this bear. Um, the way that I almost always draw the corner of the mouth on any animated character is I usually have a shadow on the upper side of the mouth, like this, and then right underneath this little crease right here, I always have it a lot higher in that contrast and color to really emphasize that, this crease is creating the form that's pushing this form up, and that's what gives it that smile appearance.
How would you recommend coloring and shading fur that has multiple colors to it, like a tortoiseshell cat? Is it better to lay out flat colors and then use a multiply layer to shade, or shade according to each color patch?
See, this is a good question because, like, since I've never done multiple shade of fur and anything before, I would probably look at, okay, how does it look in nature? So really observe and like look at, okay, if it has, so for instance, if this did have like a secondary color that wasn't like spotty, it was definitely like in a pattern, like either a tiger stripe or a zebra or whatever, I would probably go out and do the multiplier to do that. Now, it's not saying that's the one I'll say all for how I would do every different fur texture like that, but for that in that singular way I would do it for that one would probably be the way I would do it. But like I said, don't feel like you're stuck into doing the same way for every single one. Definitely really look at what you're working on and what is the best way to color that for that specific piece.
Do you have any tips for shading human skin traditionally?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is one, don't make it a flat color, and two, work with not making it look glossy. I think keeping your value range to a minimum, and if you don't know what a value range, it's like the range from like black to white. So a lot of the times, if you turn like your hue and saturation all the way to 0 and you just look at it in grayscale, if you have like a lot of transition between black and white, that might be doing way too much. Try to keep your range more minimum, and you'll see that you'll probably get a better result because of that. Oh, and I don't know if any of you guys watch Face Off. The new season started, and I'm feeling a lot better because the last season was so bad. I was worried about this one, but this one seems all right so far. So I don't know how many out there of you watch TV, but if you do, I would definitely recommend ones that kind of relate to or your career. So in that case, I always get inspired by the challenges that they do every week. And then sometimes I'll even pull out my notebook and then like sketch out my own interpretation of what that challenge is that week. So it's kind of a fun way to do like interactive television, if you want to call it that.
I get married in September, so it's unlikely I'd be able to join the first workshop. Do you think there's any likelihood that you would do another in the future?
Yeah, actually, if this one goes well, I might be doing the same exact workshop in December. So yeah, definitely if you are going to miss this one season, but you wanted to join, just know that we're definitely planning to do the this particular one a lot. Just because I think this one is so important just for really, really giving people a solid understanding of digital art and what they need to do to progress in this industry. And or at least just progress their skill set. I feel like I could do a whole nother workshop just on how to get a job in our industry. But that one's a little more tough. That one you also have to take on an individual basis because even if you're really good at drawing, sometimes it's the way you present yourself or how you present your work that might be holding you back.
How will the payment be paid? Credit card, bank transfer, or multiple things possible?
This might be, you know what? I'm not sure. It probably will end up being PayPal. Um, to be honest, I know I've talked to Wes about it, where I think the first workshop through Blender Cookie was PayPal, but we might be doing it on a credit card basis now too. So don't feel like you have to sign up and get PayPal if you don't have one. I'll definitely announce that during the mid-August thing as well. So don't quote me on that yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll also be able to do credit cards. I'm gonna give them a little tuft of hair in the front here.
Do you ever feel nervous when you get a drawing offer?
When I get a drawing offer,
Mm-hmm.
like what?
I'm not sure. Probably just like a commission, I would assume, or something.
Oh, I guess, yeah, when I was in school, I think that's one of the best things you can do. If you're in school, try taking commissions. I think it's a great way for you to get comfortable with one, just clientele and having like a due schedule and working with feeling like you're able to support yourself. Like that, I think is great. So when I first did commissions on DeviantArt, I was super excited when people would like pay me 150 to draw them a picture. Like I felt like this is a dream come true. And yeah, back in the day, awesome. But nowadays, I almost feel disheartened because I can't spend the time to really work on personal commissions at the moment. So no, nowadays, well, and I also get a lot of spam from like, hey, your work's pretty good. Can we use your work for free? Blah blah blah. Like those are actually, I think that's why it's more disheartening than the ones that I can't do because then you're like, ugh, like I can't even imagine how many other artists that there's kind of tricking out there into doing work for free.
Would it be possible for you to show us the portfolio you had when CG Cookie contacted you? Also, is asking to see old portfolios from artists an improper thing to do?
No, I actually would feel comfortable. I was gonna do it for the portfolio tutorial, which I really want to do it nice, so I keep putting it on the back burner. I think it's more of maybe I'm just afraid to do it because then I feel like I would have to keep updating it if I learn more through the years. But yeah, that's definitely something I wanted to show you guys, my actual portfolio from when I graduated school and things that I think I could have done better and what I think maybe sold Wes and Jonathan on hiring me or at least giving me a chance because I do have an idea since they told me. And actually, I don't know. I could tell you right now. There's no reason to hide it. There were 2 pages that I had where I gave step-by-steps on how I drew something. And I don't know why at the time I included that. I think that was something that a bunch of us started including, like step-by-step, just because we saw how many other top name artists were, so we kind of were adapting it to our own work. And I included that in my actual portfolio, and Wes and Jonathan said that they were intrigued just by that, and that's what got me my job interview. So I I didn't. It was like one of those things where it accidentally catered to what they were looking for, which I would talk about in building a portfolio. Like if you're building a portfolio for like Riot Games, you want to make sure your art kind of relates to their style and their subject matter. Where if your work is all pixel art and they look through it, like they might be like, "Oh, that's great, but I don't even know if they can do what we're asking or what we're known for." So you definitely want to cater your work to whatever company or whatever work you are looking and seeking out to do. And I don't know why, but I'm having a lot of fun drawing this bear. Every now and then, I always forget how much fun it is to draw animated characters.
Do you have any tips for keeping a drawing or series of drawings with the same level of detail, like for book illustrations?
That one's really tough. We CG Cookie, we were actually doing a book that I was working on. It was going to be a children's illustration. Since I was always really interested in doing children's book, I actually thought that was going to be my career for a little while. But I remember how tough it was because over like 2 months, the first drawing I felt was nearly as good as the one I did 2 months later. So staying consistent is definitely a struggle. I would definitely say you really got to put your best foot forward with the first couple ones and really do some practice sketches. Really try to nail down the forms of whatever character it is. I was working with a mouse character, and since I've never really drawn a mouse before, yeah, my early sketches of the book were really rough, and they definitely could have used some work. But then as I progressed, like 2 months later, I've drawn this mouse so many times that I kind of learned some like tricks on, oh, he looks better with his ears at this angle, or the proportions of the mouse look a little different when I do it this way. So yeah, you definitely learn as you go along, but then you do have to kind of curve it a little. Still matches the original couple sketches, unless if you literally have the time to go back and fix them. So my biggest advice would be do a lot of pre-sketches before you do anything final, and really try to nail down something you're confident and comfortable in repeating over and over again.
What animated movie's art style did you enjoy the most? Mine is Rio.
Oh, from Blue Sky. Yeah, they have some great styles. Man, art style did I enjoy the most? I don't even think I could give you a solid answer on that one, just because like if we're talking 3D animation, I guess I could narrow it down. If we're talking 2D, Spirited Away definitely nailed it for me. I felt like everything in that movie was pretty perfect. I don't use that word a lot, but I felt like that movie was pretty perfect. In terms of 3D animation, I really like the studio Leica. I hope I'm saying that right. Laiki, or A, I mean. They did Coraline and Paranorman, and they're doing the Box Trolls, which is coming out soon. That style, I love. I love, love, love that style. But even that's not animated, that's more stop motion. So I guess it's tough. I would say, you know what? I don't have a clear answer. I don't want to say something and then feel like I'll regret it because movies are a big thing for me. So if I just blurt my first reactionary answer out, I feel like I'll regret it.
I find that whenever I draw or paint, it takes forever. How do you start working faster?
Work faster. If you find yourself doing like slow brush strokes or you're blending too much, stop. Like literally, like right now, I'm in a mode where I'm going a little slower, but then every now and then I'll pick up and I'll go faster. So catch yourself. Try to be like, okay, how slow am I going? Or am I zooming in too much? I find that that slows down processes a lot. Try to stay zoomed out as much as you can when you're working on a piece. And when you're detailing, you can zoom in. Like maybe I'll start detailing the eyes soon, and that's where I will zoom in. Because since I want most of the focus to be drawn toward this area, even though it's probably going to be all drawn more toward the mouth, we can bring some of that detail into the eyes and really make those look nice. So I guess, yeah, stay zoomed out and literally just move your brush faster.
And if you're a beginner, just like that will come with time.
Yeah, so if you're really like struggling with even making it look presentable, yeah, it's okay if you take your time and if it takes you for a long time to finish something. Each of my characters that I did when I was in school took me at least minimum 8 hours, at least. And yeah, looking back, I'm like, man, I could make that in 2 hours easy. You know, it's one of those things where, yeah, when you're starting out, it's not only are you becoming comfortable drawing, but you're comfortable drawing with a tablet, comfortable with the Photoshop of software, comfortable with how do things blend in this uh, 2D interface. Like it's definitely a different experience all around. So if you're slower, don't let that discourage you. It'll come with time. Just keep practicing.
Would you ever consider using another textured brush, or would you say it's better to pick one brush and learn with it?
I would say learn with a basic brush. Even the brushes that I made recently, where yeah, it's kind of cool to use them, and every now and then, like you might get a cool, like I really want to do a Jinx League of Legend fan art, like making a blue braid brush. Like obviously, I would use it for that. But for things that aren't specific like that, use a big basic brush and learn how to blend and do everything with that, because then you'll have the confidence to literally be able to blend anything. And then using a textured brush will just give you will save time. So it's all about, for me, like using those kind of brushes, it's all about saving you time, but you're not really learning as much. So even using like textured environment brushes, yeah, you're not really learning how to draw an environment, but you're learning how to take the shortcuts. So definitely learn how to do the entire thing by yourself if you really had to, and then learn how to do the shortcuts and stuff like that. Man, I really, really love this color transition between brown and gold. If if you guys have ever are stuck with wanting to choose color palettes, try using brown and like a goldish yellow. I like the I don't know the feel that it gives off. I really like.
How would you draw dunes?
How do you draw dudes?
Dunes, like Dunes.
Oh, I draw dudes like surfer dude. Dunes, I would definitely, since once again, since I'm not an environment artist, I would definitely have to do my research. It's one of those things where, yeah, I could jump in it and give it my best shot. But honestly, if I want the best quality that I'm able to produce, I would definitely practice a little while. Dunes in general, I would feel like it depends a lot on contrast from like where one dune ends and one meets, and like the angle of perspective that you're seeing the dunes at. I feel like that's really important. So I'd probably do some practice sketches and then do some work in Photoshop and see if I can recreate photo as best I can from for practice, and then go out and see if I can do it on my own. So now I'm using gray for the top of the nose to kind of signify that the light source is hitting the top, and then I'll grab a white to really show that the surface itself has that shiny, sleek texture to it. It's kind of like a dog where their noses are always very wet looking. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing for the lips. But for the lips, I'm going to keep very dark. Not so much of that. Maybe a little bit of that gray, kind of pillow shaded around the area. But then I'm going to use white to really signify the wetness of the lips. Make my brush smaller. Something like
How
that.
good do I need to be to even have a chance in the industry? When I'm looking at places like CG Society, I feel like if I don't draw at this level, then I have no chance, which gets really overwhelming.
Yeah, if I was to be honest with you, you definitely have to have a higher level of skill to get a job in big places. Like if you want to work at EA or Naughty Dog or all these big name companies, I mean your competition are those people that you're looking at. So yeah, I definitely would look at that, but I wouldn't get discouraged. If anything, I would let that be an inspiration of like, okay, this is the level I need to get at. let's take the necessary steps to get at this level. Because if we look at that and be like, well, I can't do that, I'm not never getting a job. I think that's a very wrong way to look at it. Where even like when I was little, I was always very inspired by Tetsuya Nomura's concept art. I never thought to myself, oh, that's so good, I'll never be able to do it on my own. I always thought, oh, I can't wait to show my interpretation of my characters, and I let him drive me as an inspiration. So don't look at these people and let it discourage you. If anything, let that inspire you. I know sometimes it's hard, and I know it's easy to say that, but really, if you practice and you keep with it, you will get better. And in time, yeah, you'll be able to look back like a year or two from now, and you'll be like, yeah, my stuff's gotten so much better. I'm so glad that didn't discourage me, and just through pure practice, I did get better. I'm actually not sure what a bear's nostril looks like. I'm gonna ad-lib this. This is a good example of where you would want to use reference. And you know what? I think I might just pull up Google really quick.
Do you have any
Bear.
experience with colored pencils or crayons? And do you have any tips for it?
Yeah, so while I was in high school, I Prismacolors were my thing. Those really expensive colored pencils that you would like could only use in the classroom because your mom would never spend the money on those kind of colored pencils. And I remember getting really comfortable with those, and they have like a pastel feel. And my biggest advice would be not to push too hard on the brush on the canvas, because then you won't be able to blend the colors. If you lay it down lighter, then you're able to work with more shades and colors because it's not so pressed into the paper itself. There's room to grow with the colors, so to speak.
On the color picker box, do you mind showing us how you move around in the box to choose your colors from dark to light?
Yeah, let me go ahead. I, I could show you my screen really quick. Hold on. It's gonna hide. My desktop is a mess, so I'm gonna hide that a little bit. Maybe I'll make this full screen. Okay, so hold on. I know it kicked me out of my screen share. All right, there we go. All right, so when I pull up my color picture box, so I know I say this a lot, but there's three things I always do when I draw. I resize my brush, I pick up colors, and then I blend. Literally, that's my entire process of how I create anything. So usually, like, I'll look at an area, like, where do I need to define next? So I'm like, okay, under this chin area, I probably need to define. So I choose a brush size that is appropriate. I'll pick up a color that I want to lay out. So let's say I want to lay out this color, and then I lay it out. So a lot of the times, I'm not using my color box. I'm using colors that are already in the canvas. But I think what you're asking is how do you pick your colors when you're not doing that? So let's say I wanted a soft blue. Let's say we're going to work with secondary light. Probably open up my color picker, and in my mind, I already kind of have a feel of like where all my colors are. So all of them should be like in this upper region, as you can see as I go through. And that's just something I know through time on like what colors I'm choosing. And like I usually get a little more saturated where the light source is, and then as I get away from the light source, it should be a little more desaturated. But then when I'm choosing a secondary color, I'll be like, my safe zone is definitely more left. I always think working with muted colors is so much more beneficial than working with saturated colors, because saturated colors definitely define areas, and they scream for attention, where more muted colors are there to kind of complement the whole screaming colors. So if you have areas like that, if I make the eyes really intense, the area around it, I'll probably want it to be a little less intense. So now, in terms of choosing a secondary color, I'll look at this. I'll choose a very muted blue since it'll complement the warm hues in the face. I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. So let's say, I'm trying to think where I want this bounce light. Okay, we're going to go from underneath. I guess the toughest part with doing something like this is making sure I'm consistent. And usually if I stop talking as fast, because I know I usually word diarrhea all the time during these live streams, but if I get really quiet, it's because I'm usually trying to concentrate. If it's a little too much, I'll erase it in some areas. Something like that. I mean, this is a little crazy intense. I mean, I kind of like the direction it's going in. I probably would want to
I
clean
like
it
the
a little
nose
more
like that.
with the bounce lighting.
Yeah.
I think it definitely adds a little more to it. But I want to make sure I get it everywhere. Actually, I probably should have. So this is a good example of where I would want to put this color on the side because I want the pure color of this as my go-to for laying it out on the fur in different areas. Where if I'm color picking, let me see the difference. So I definitely want to make sure I have at least one sample of that pure color somewhere that I can pick from.
How do you determine the light source if you aren't using pillow shading?
I usually stick with a very standard overhead, slightly to the side light, and I would say that's a very much go-to for concept artists in general, because it's a very safe lighting scenario where if it was a concept piece or you're giving it to a modeler, it's very easy to recognize, okay, that's how the forms are, and this is probably how big this shape is. So I would definitely stick with a lighting that isn't like super intense or dramatic. I mean, you can, especially if you're doing illustrations, I almost recommend that more. But when you're doing concept pieces, just keep in mind that you're not the only one that's going to be seeing this. Unless it's for personal work, then you can have whatever lighting scenario you want. But yeah, just kind of keep that in mind as you do it. Oh my god, this is looking really creepy now. I would probably make this blue a little less intense everywhere just because it's a little overwhelming for me right now. Okay, but like I said, and I know I never got to it, and the stream will end off in like I want to say 10 minutes. So let's say for the eyes, I talked about zooming in and detailing it. So man, he is way too close to my face right now. Um, Normally, I wouldn't even do this for a concept like this because I like the chalky appearance. And usually, if you zoom in, your brush is so small that oftentimes you'll lose a lot of that texture that you'll be adding to it. But in this scenario, let's go ahead and do it. So I want to make these eyes look as nice as I can. So let's go ahead. I guess I'm going to start with this eye. So definitely want to clean it up a bit. And you'll definitely notice when you zoom in, it'll be a little more messy. And I think that's why people love zooming in. And I know I did. I only worked zoom in for a while when I was in school. And I've come to learn that oftentimes that will hurt you because you're wasting a lot of time detailing with details that won't even be seen when you're zoomed out. So you always want to keep in mind that if you can't see the detail that you're putting when you're zoomed out, what is the purpose of adding it? I mean, yeah, there's some I'm sorry, OCD that's out there because I definitely know I feel that all the time. But really, you gotta let that go and know that if it's not adding to the piece, it's actually taking away from the piece. Okay, so I'm definitely making the bottom side of the iris a little lighter in color. Give that nice shine. And a little bit of that shadow on the upper eye area too. Because the eyebrow itself would be casting a little bit of a shadow. I mean, I'm not really sure how I'm defining these eyebrows. They're actually not the best eyebrows I've ever drawn. Because they're not defined enough for me to really be able to pull from them. But what I am going to do is bears have that inner black, that not skin. I don't know what it is called exactly, but I'm going to add just a slight shine on the inside area of that eye right there. And then we're going to add it on the eyeball itself.
Do you do any traditional art? And do you think that artists who specialize in digital drawings would have better chances in getting a job than those who mainly draw traditionally and they have the same amount of skill?
So, okay, you know what, in like 5 minutes, I'm going to show you my sketchbook because I literally sketched something last night. I think always having those traditional skills it's really important, and it will translate to digital because there isn't a difference between digital and traditional art besides the software. Like I can't do undo with traditional stuff. There is no control Z. Like digital art makes a lot things a lot easier. But the way that you're going about things, like you're still recognizing forms, you're still placing in light sources the way that you see it. I mean, you're still using your way of going about doing something, and it and those skills of being able to observe and analyze and be able to interpret. Okay, that's how this form looks, or that's how lighting affects this surface texture. If you're learning that through traditional means, yeah, of course that will translate into digital just as soon as you become comfortable with the software. So yes, I think it's very, 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 very important to still keep up with your traditional stuff, even if you feel like you want to be a 2D digital artist.
But in terms of getting a job, like, do people in the industry like prefer that you have this like the digital skill set?
Oh, okay, yeah. I would still show it off in your portfolio, but make sure it is really strong. Because sometimes that is actually more impressive than digital work. Because digital work, you can do shortcuts and you can get away with doing things that you can't with traditional stuff. So if I looked at a traditional drawing and their life drawing model was like kick ass, like it was awesome in its proportions, the way they shaded it, yeah, I would include that because that might land them a job just because the employer can see, oh, they understand like this subject matter super well, you know. But definitely don't want one to outshadow the other. Like if your traditional skills are definitely lacking, where your digital skills are definitely like on par with the industry, yeah, I would probably leave those traditional stuff out.
Like, if there was two people and like one only drew like traditionally and the other one mainly did, like digital, but they both had like the same amount of like skill of like just drawing. Do you think like the digital artist would get hired like over the traditional one? Like, is the demand for digital like more?
Yeah, if I was honest, yeah, it definitely is.
Next question is, any tips on how to get over the detail OCD for people who have issues working zoomed in and detailing their pieces?
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking to my former self. Um, just stop. It's one of those things where it takes a lot of willpower to be like, I won't zoom in on this piece. I just won't. And I remember how frustrated I would get when I started this transition because there was a point where I was like, I need to get faster. Like this is taking me forever and it shouldn't be. And I remember the first time I tried doing a piece and I wouldn't zoom in and it was very, very frustrating. Like my OCD meters were off the chart. I was like frustrated. I was flustered and it made the piece not so great. But then the next time I did it, I was like, okay, well, the first time was kind of a disaster, but I'm not going to let that get me down. And yeah, the second one wasn't that great either. But then over time, yeah, it did get better. So it's one of those things where, yeah, that does suck. And getting over that OCD isn't easy, and it doesn't come with the first few pieces. Sometimes it takes like 4, or in my case, I think it was like 7, until I was like, this looks awesome. And it took me like literally half the time. So I think once you get to that point, then that makes it all worth it. So just keep that in your mind. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like you'll get there. Just know it will be really frustrating, and don't give up on it. See, now I'm getting sucked into detailing. I could detail this whole thing and just enjoy the hell out of it, just because this is the part of 2D drawing that I really, really enjoy. But I know it's a live stream, so I want to save time. So I just want to do this other eye. Then I'll show you some stuff really quick, and then we'll call this live stream done.
My lines are always too loose and imprecise, so when I finish a sketch, the lines are so thick and vague that I can't find the line I was happy with when going back to ink. Any tips on dealing with that?
This actually feels like a DeAndre question because I feel like you draw with loose line.
Yeah.
So how would you answer that?
Well, I'm still struggling with it a little bit. um, I guess what I'm trying to do now is just work like less messy because trying to clean it up does take like a lot of time and like I think what might help is like if you like finding out if you like discovering your concept through like just sketching like furiously like just to do a bunch of like small ones first and then like once you figure out like what you want to do like sit down and like do like clean line art because it is really hard to clean up um or like sometimes I find that my messy sketch looks how I want it to and then like when I try to clean it up it doesn't look like how I want anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of like trying to like clean it up every time, I would just suggest like starting over. There's no like problem with that.
Yeah,
Um,
very true. That's
doing
also super discouraging. It
what?
can be. Like, I gotta start over. But you're so right, though. It can make a world of a difference if you just give it a second try.
Mm-hmm. Okay, your next question. You still have a few more before the stream is over, so I'm gonna try
That's
and.
fine. I'm actually enjoying just shading if you don't mind going like another 20 minutes.
Okay. As a student, not a pro, do you have to include your commission earnings when you pay taxes in the US? Because here in Europe, whenever you sell something, you have to pay taxes. Because once you have your first sale, you're considered a pro.
Yeah, so it's one of those weird things where I think it's if you make over 600, you have to make note of it per year. It's one of those things where even I'm not too familiar where I never made over, well, you know what? I'm not going to answer that because I'm not even too sure of it myself, so I don't want to give you the wrong information if I'm not right.
Right. Why don't you use vector programs like Illustrator for the resolution benefit?
Uh, I struggle with Illustrator just because of the blending capability. I don't find nearly as smooth as Photoshop, where I feel like I'm working a lot with like the line tool. So I did not really enjoy Illustrator. Where Photoshop, I just felt like this is so natural. Well, after a while, it wasn't right away, but I'm at the point where it's very comfortable and easy to blend, and I just find it to be less graphic based. I think if you're doing like graphic design, I think Illustrator is better. But then if you're doing things where it's more like sketchy, which Photoshop can sometimes be, then doing something like this, I think is, or using Photoshop is better.
Any suggestions for how to get better at techniques like speed painting?
Whew, that is rough. Um, since I'm not even comfortable with speed painting that much, I would say find a few brushes that really work to a speed painting benefit. Where sometimes like a circle hardage brush, it'll still do the job, but for speed painting, I would say you really want to lay out forms and shapes really quickly. So your goal, and honestly, this kind of depends from person to person, but for me, it would be laying down like a chaotic mess of shape and forms and then being able to see and pull from the ones that I create. I know Pui does that kind of technique, and I've always admired him for that, but
But he's not a speed painter.
no, that's why it's a little tough where his technique is what a speed painter would probably do, but then the detailing is a whole lot different. Where detailing, then you're literally focusing on isolated lighting and shapes that can represent a prominent figure or a subject matter that you're trying to create quickly. It's like if you're trying to create a character standing in like a valley or something, that character might be represented by like four brush strokes, literally.
Yeah, I would
So
agree.
what?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
then
I
like
do.
creating that, sometimes like a texture brush, like even a chalk brush, might be better. Where a circle brush, it might look cheapened a little bit. So I would definitely make sure you find some brushes that might cater to what you're trying to create as well.
The brushstrokes can kind of like make the painting. Like
Exactly.
you want like the really basic shapes when you're doing digital painting that just like suggest like things look realistic, like things looking realistic,
Everything.
not actually like go in and do the work because you don't have time for that. Um, so yeah, definitely brushes help, and like um, just knowing what you're drawing ahead of time too.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you
huge.
have to be like really good at drawing to like be able to go that fast. Like you can't be like using mini references or like doing studies like while you're speed painting. You have to like know exactly like what you want to do, um, and how to do it. So I
Because I
wouldn't
think,
recommend speed painting for like beginners at all.
yeah, because I was
Or
gonna say like a lot of those really good speed painters, look at their traditional studies or like look at their other work where it takes them forever, but it looks like gorgeous, like drop dead gorgeous, and that's because of their understanding that they're able to go so fast during speed paintings.
Mhm. All right, next question. Hi,
Okay.
I'm thinking of creating a few graphic novels, but I've never done anything like it before. I'm wondering, is it easy to publish graphic novels, and can you recommend the best publishers?
God, I wish I had the answers for you for that. Where I feel like I really want to make my own as well, and actually, it's easier nowadays just because of how much, like, it's very saturated with people wanting to do this, especially independently, where you don't need a publisher sometimes. Like, even if you can get like a good Kickstarter going, but definitely make sure you have a company in mind and that you're able to contact beforehand. So be like, yeah, if I wanted to ship out 2,000 copies of this graphic novel, how much will it cost? Can you give me a discount based on the quantity? Like you have to think very business sense, which I know for a lot of artists that might make you squirm a little bit. But it's, I mean, I find that fun, but I know for some people it might just be like, I have a publisher do all that for me. So in my opinion, I would do it independently because, well, one, I can't recommend any publishers because I'm not sure of any really good ones. But two, I think having it be your own gives you more freedom and licensing to do what you want. This bear is ridiculous.
Krita for Mac is out. Will you review it?
Oh, that's right. I downloaded it last week. I never opened it though. To be honest, it would take a little bit. I might do a first impressions, but even that, I still want to play with it just so I can be comfortable, like knowing where all the keyboard shortcuts are. Because if I was doing a full review, I wouldn't want to just do a first impression because, yeah, I don't know where everything is. So my first impression might be kind of frustrating, but that's because I'm not familiar with the software itself. But I'm actually super, super glad that they finally made the Mac version available because I know it's still going through the Kickstarter process. But I think I heard that the demo, this is why I didn't use it though when I downloaded it right away, is because apparently there was a glitch or something where it only affected the Mac users, and I was like, well, I'll wait until they fix it. I think that's why I left it at that.
I find it really hard to make my painting look crisp.
Is that it?
Yeah. So do you have
uh,
any tips, I guess?
yeah, I think, and I feel like I'm slowly becoming that. This is like my tagline is like contrast. Everything really comes down to contrast for me. Like even like this image of the bear. Like let me remove a few layers. I guess this isn't the best example because I didn't really work blurry to start off with. But for something that you're trying to create crisp edges, contrast. So even with right here, where that line creates that contrast, or even here, like I could take out the line art completely. Let me go ahead and do that. And just having those two hues butt up against each other creates that contrast. So you don't always have to think of contrast in values, but contrast in hues as well. And that's something I always try to reiterate as much as I can. So if your image is looking a little fuzzy, try adding some contrast to areas that you want the viewers to look at, or the area where you're trying to bring the viewer's attention to most. And you'll see how much more crisp your image will become.
Tim, what exercise do you consider essential for anyone that is starting digital painting?
Hmm. Are they talking? Do you think they're talking of the ones that we offer on Concept Cookie, or just in general?
Um, Both.
Okay.
Why not?
I guess the best exercise would be practice doing people. And you know what? This is very personal preference, right? I don't even know if this is the best advice because if you want to become a character artist, I would say keep drawing people in profile and faces and things like that. Or fabric studies, really learn like costuming and things like that. If you're more of an environment artist, like learn how to draw trees accurately, see,
Oh,
download some good brush textures.
what
What?
about like your like ball exercise or like where you just start shading like a ball?
I know, I was thinking the value study one.
Yeah, the values.
Which that
That's
is also a great one. I think also learning to blend comfortably. Yeah, I guess yeah, the value shading would be a great one because then it does kind of force you to learn how to blend as well. I don't really have an exercise purely based on blending because I feel like that's such a basic, but I really should. Maybe that will be one next week. Where now I'm getting more into like intermediate stuff. Like I think this week is a cloud. Actually, yeah, it started that yesterday. Where yeah, clouds. I mean, you definitely have to have an understanding of like value and lighting and things like that. Like these are all very much intermediate level things. But if you're just starting out, yeah, just learning how to blend and like look at value stuff, I think is very important.
I think that's the first one actually you suggested for me a few years ago.
The
Um,
oh no, remember the first one that we did? I do.
I, the
What?
eye? It was
Oh, it
either the
wasn't
eye or
I.
the ball. The value.
There was one more that I'm thinking of that we did.
Pants.
Yes, the red pants. I actually should make that into an exercise just because I
Yeah.
feel that incorporates lighting, value, and color all in one.
Those are all good ones. I think it's like they're all simple enough, but like you get to practice like every like component of
Mm-hmm.
like, digital painting. So
Ooh, I do not like how I'm painting this.
can you draw comic book art?
No. I think for me, those proportions that you usually see in comic book style, or like the style itself, and this is definitely like a personal preference, where for me, it's not really my go-to. Like, I would much rather do like graphic illustrated novel type stuff, but not so much comic book stuff. Especially since I love working in color, and most comic books are black and white, where it kind of takes out a lot of what I find really fun when I color. Okay, we're gonna cut this off soon. I'm just gonna focus on the chin area, and then we're gonna call it done. So if you have
When
any other questions, just feel free to ask them now, and Deandra will get to as many as we can before we have to cut it off.
I think we have just a few couple left.
Okay.
When do I know that I created enough contrast in a drawing? I tend to do too less of it.
Too less or too much?
Too less.
Oh, then
Not
do more.
enough.
Yeah, do more.
I would say my suggestion would just be zooming out and like if you can see like the forms clearly and like and you can tell like what's happening from far away, then like you know you
Yeah,
have
don't
enough
matter.
contrast in there. Um, and if you can't see like the forms clearly or like what's happening on your image, then you don't have enough, obviously.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest advice we're giving to people today is definitely stay zoomed out
Yeah.
and like really try that for a piece. Like just be like, I'm not gonna zoom in once.
Even in my figure drawing class, like that was one of my favorite classes ever, and the teacher was great. And his one of his biggest like advices was just like squinting almost at like the model that you would have in front of you, and like just looking at like the big shapes which is essentially like the same thing, just like zooming out, like not getting like trapped in like the details,
Mm-hmm.
but blocking everything in. So,
That's good advice.
can you draw full 24 frames per second animation? I would.
Uh, no.
Tim's not an animator,
No.
um, but
I did do some animations for client work for a pixel game I worked on, but it would be like a 6 frame or an 8 frame animation. It would be like one of those repeated animations. It's like I can do basic stuff, but like I didn't go to school for animation. I'm not comfortable with doing that myself. So no, I would say just no, I could not do that. I mean, if I really wanted to, like this is one of those things. Don't get discouraged. I feel like that was an awful thing to say where I can't do it. You can do anything you want if you practice hard enough and you really are determined and passionate about doing it. But for me, since I'm not passionate about it, I just know I won't do it, and I never will. I'll never learn it unless if I was forced to.
you should participate in Cycre's stream this weekend.
I should actually. I just talked to Pavla. I'm going to be asking him to join me in either next week or the week after.
In a Wednesday stream?
Yep.
Cool.
You know what? I should contact Psychra. I really like his tutorials, so I think it would be good if we finally did one together.
Hi Tim, do you have any tips on how to practice light, like exercise or study?
A city?
Like an exercise or a study?
Oh, study.
Mhm.
Yes. This one's a hard one where my mind first went to like setting up a scene and drawing it, but do something really simple, something with like simple shapes. Even like this bear, like take away a lot of the wrinkles and kind of the over excess nonsense that you wouldn't need, and just that would be a really great practice on lighting because you're looking at shapes. So like this cheek area is a sphere or spherical like. So I would shade it accordingly, and his head is kind of a sphere. So yeah, the light source would be here, and it would pillow shade out. But then when this form meets another form like this eyeball, so it'd be a little concave right there. I would have to kind of think about, okay, how would the lighting reflect that? And I think doing things that are very simple or very shapular would be great light studies.
And from a previous question, they didn't mean a regular tablet, they meant a pad tablet. Do you have any experience with that?
No. Wait, are you talking like an iPad or something?
I'm not quite sure.
Because I know that there are other tablets that are a little different. Um, if you are talking like an iPad or like an Android device, yeah, they kind of I it's tough where not all the features are there that like a tablet in like Photoshop would do, but yeah, it does kind of give you the basic premise of what you can create. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think you're talking about this other thing that I first heard about when I was in school, where you like draw on paper, and then there's this thing that recognizes what you draw, and then you can transfer it into like Photoshop later on. If that is what you're talking about, no, I've never had experience in that. Or if that's not even what you're talking about, that even, then you might have cleared up a little bit.
Any tips for someone currently in a figure drawing class?
Enjoy the hell out of it. That was my favorite class in school by far. And I
Yeah,
felt like that's where I learned the most too.
don't take it lightly. Don't like just try to like push like don't like neglect it because I know a lot of people in my figure drawing class were like, I don't need to learn this. I want to draw cartoons. I don't need to like learn realistic proportions and stuff. And they're like, that's the completely wrong attitude. You should have like you should take it seriously because like I forgot who it was, but like one common saying is like you have to like know the rules before you can like break them. Like you can't like draw anime and you can't like draw like cartoon characters unless like you know like what the forms are like deriving from, I think. If that makes sense.
I guess one of those things where you can do it, but it would be a hell of a lot better if you accurately know like the proportions between the arm lengths and stuff like that, and then that will translate then into your anime work.
It's easy to simplify down than like
Yes.
start so simple, you know. And then the squinting thing also I would recommend. Just like working in the big shapes. Um yes.
Okay, I think I'm as much done with this bear as I can be at the moment. So if you guys have any final questions, I'm going to show you guys really quick uh, some things. So sometimes I get caught up in wanting to finish something like this tooth. Okay, so that's my bear. I'll post them up a little later. Um, really quick, so someone was asking about, where's my sketchbook? Oh, someone was asking, do I still draw every day? And nowadays I'm really good about drawing every single day. Where this I drew yesterday while watching Face Off, and I think having a sketchbook nearby that when you're doing something, you can still like I don't even know if you guys can really see these
You
that
have
clearly.
to hold it for like a second for it to focus.
Okay. But like what I'm trying to say is like when I draw traditionally, I'm still
Mhm.
looking at like proportions and form, and sometimes having the freedom of doing it with a pencil, or what some ways say like the lack of freedom of doing it in pencil is that yeah, I don't have a control Z. So I have to be very precise. I'm looking at anatomy, I think, a lot cleaner, where when I'm doing it digital, I know I can move it in liquify, I can adjust it accordingly. But when I'm doing stuff traditionally, there is no control Z. So you definitely have to be very conscious of where you're laying your shapes and your forms. And I think that's why drawing traditionally helps so much, because then that will translate digitally. So really quick, I'll show you. So when I went to Comic Con, and this is what kind of inspired this whole bear thing, is I met David Coleman, and he was selling this little bear book, and he even drew me a little bear design and wrote my name, but he thought I said Bon, so that's why he wrote B-O-N. But this is a great little book, and this was a fun one to meet. And if you are considering going to conventions, go to them, because there will at least be one artist that you'll find that is really good, and you'll be able to talk to one-on-one. And being able to talk to someone in person is such a different experience, and like you get to really feel them out on like their or ask them any questions on their experience with the industry even, or even how they go about doing their own work. There's a whole bunch of other books I could show you. I'm not going to, just for the sake of time. I will show you though. My hero was at Comic Con. His name's Alan Williams, and he does like these really awesome sketches, and he signed it. And I got to talk to him for a really long time. So this is the second time I met him. I met him at Spectrum as well. But man, just sometimes being able to immerse yourself with these kind of people and be surrounded by them, it's inspiring. So I recommend going to these conventions. But yeah, okay, that's kind of all the new news we have, and we're definitely way over our time limit. I'm sweating right now because I had to close my door and I need to get outside or do something. So I want to thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m., and that's Central Time. And if you're outside of the States, that's -5 GMT. And next week, hopefully I'll have Psychra. Maybe it'll be the week after, but I usually post what we're going to do about an hour or two, or actually lately I've been really good, usually about 3 hours before the stream actually starts. And yeah, and stay tuned for the announcements with the upcoming workshop. So thanks again. Deandra, you want to say bye?
Yep. Goodbye everyone.
All right, bye guys. See you later.